about motivation. So let's see if I can get this. Okay, full screen, let's go. Is it a good idea to praise students for good behavior, to award points for paying attention? Is it a good idea to give money for students who earn good grades? These are questions that every educator must wrestle with, some more than others. Finding the answers to these questions in educational research has been muddled. Some research say it is appropriate. It helps students to be motivated and to learn new skills that will help them in the future. Others say it is a terrible thing to do. The extrinsic rewards deflate students' intrinsic motivation and make students reward junkies, unable to persevere through challenges and difficulties. Deci and Ryan, Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, are researchers who claim that the research on whether intrinsic or extrinsic motivation is better cannot be sufficiently answered one way or the other. Instead, they argue extrinsic and intrinsic motivation falls on a continuum. That is, for many things, we are motivated both extrinsically and intrinsically. We do it for some extrinsic rewards as well as internal satisfaction. I think it is important for you to know this continuum so that you can gauge how you are motivating your students and that you can know how your strategies help students to become more intrinsically motivated so that they can persevere through difficult and dull content. Please note that the movement to become intrinsically motivated does not mean that a person starts off extrinsically or amotivated and then increasingly becomes intrinsically motivated. There is no evidence that they were at first extrinsically motivated and over time become intrinsically motivated. Our understanding about motivation is on shifting sand. We may have a different theory to use to help us understand motivation in the future. For now, we are using Deci and Ryan's theory about motivation. Okay, so our journey will start with extrinsic motivation and we will move to increasing intrinsic motivation in 4 steps. But remember, this isn't a way that we develop intrinsic motivation, it's just a way to sort of describe what motivation is. But before we do that, let's be clear on some definitions. Motivation is about wanting something, engaging in behaviors to get something. In human terms, it could be to get money, food, power, sex. Motivation theory is an attempt to explain how and why humans are motivated. What makes us do the things that we do? How do we make these choices? Extrinsic motivation is being motivated by some external rewards. These rewards motivate us to do the behavior. And these rewards vary from something tangible, like money, food, sex, in pure human terms, to something less tangible, like power, prestige, or friendship. Intrinsic motivation is being internally driven to achieve some inner satisfaction or pleasure. Typically, people find the process of achieving a goal rewarding. The outcome of intrinsic motivation is that people enjoy the behavior even when the behavior does not yield extrinsic rewards, when there is even failure or negative outcomes as a result. So intrinsic motivation is doing something for inner satisfaction. You're not always going to get something for it, and that's okay. For example, I enjoy swimming, and that's me right here. I am intrinsically motivated to swim, even when I am not the fastest in the pool or when it is too early to get up and swim. I enjoy it and I go to it. When I get into the pool, there are very few things that will make me not enjoy the water, except if the water is too cold. I will swim in the rain. I will swim when the air temperature is about 40 degrees. But if the water is above 75 and not over 85, I will enjoy it. But is this truly intrinsic motivation? Am I truly motivated for intrinsic reasons? I will return to the question and then later on in the screencast. Now that we have defined these terms, let's go through DC and Ryan's 4 steps. It is important, and these are the 4 steps that I'm referring to. It is important to know that the first 2 steps, these 2, reflect our motivation to satisfy physiological or emotional needs. These motivational states can be described as originating from our limbic regions of the brain. Or it could also refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we've talked about that. The next 2 steps reflect our motivation to satisfy our high-order thinking needs or wants. These motivational states can be described as originating from our neocortex region, so up here, or as Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests, social and esteem issues or needs. It is a good idea to think about the role the brain may be playing in our motivational states, especially on the extrinsic to intrinsic continuum. So let's go through the steps. So external regulation. What DC and Ryan call external regulation, it is using tangible goals to regulate our behavior. Giving candy for good behavior, paying students for good grades, paying money for goals as kid scores in hockey games. You want students to do something, then you give them or reward them for doing it. These tangible rewards meet our physiological needs. Food, candy, even money are examples of such rewards. So in other words, if we know that we could get something, we're more likely to engage in the behavior. We are motivated to engage in these behaviors in order to get those external rewards. Alfie Kohn, a research educator and author of the book Punished by Rewards, writes extensively about how toxic this kind of regulation is. He suggests we are bribing students for acceptable behavior in the classroom, and it is wrong. As wrong as he may think it is a very common practice, and some teachers argue it is the only way to get students to behave and learn. Clearly, this method should not be the only way to motivate or regulate students' behavior. So let's learn some others. Oh, before we do that, I want to talk about punishment. Punishment is also a motivator. Extrinsic regulation may include things that punish people. For example, a fine is designed to deter behavior, to deter people from, let's say, for example, parking in convenient parking spaces otherwise reserved for disabled people. They place a fine on those spaces. If you park there without the proper decal, you will be fined a lot of money. This system of punishment or external regulation tends to work very effectively. So when talking about motivation, we are talking about being drawn to a behavior as well as being drawn away from a behavior. We can fine students for not doing their homework. So we would be deterring them from being lazy. Or we can take away student parking privileges, free time, school parties, in order to get students to engage in the appropriate behavior, such as completing homework, earning good grades, or attending class. All right, so let's move on. Introjected regulation. This is the teacher using intangible rewards to regulate behavior. We are using emotions to drive behavior. It is the limbic system that's being activated here. We praise students in the hope that they may feel good. We honor students' achievements with grades, medals, trophies, or certificates. While these are seemingly tangible, they are in fact intangible because they are symbols of how they are supposed to make them feel. You cannot use a certificate to gain something, to fulfill a physiological need. The certificate, instead, is a symbol of a person's appreciation. These certificates and medals and honors are meant to appeal to a person's emotions and feelings of pride. We can negatively regulate a person by appealing to their sense of guilt. If you do not call your mother, then you are a bad person. Or, if you do not do your homework, you will be left behind. You will earn poor grades. If you do not get good grades, you will not be allowed to select your electives before everyone else does, or attend the school dance. So these are feelings of guilt. Because of the symbolic nature and the reliance on emotions, we are moving into intrinsic realm. In other words, we are not relying on meeting physiological needs. We are thinking about how behaviors make us feel, our emotions, what makes us feel pride or guilt. The key is that another person, like a teacher, is regulating the behaviors by putting something in the environment that promotes these rewards. The carrot, though, is positive, feel-good feelings, or pride and self-preservation, or the avoidance of feeling guilty. Being commended for passing a test may make a person feel proud. A person can be motivated to achieve such acclaim and feelings. Likewise, being held responsible for a failed project may make a person feel guilty. A person can avoid not doing a behavior or engage in appropriate behavior in order to avoid notoriety or guilt. Here, we're going to start talking about the next two steps to moving toward intrinsic motivation and away from extrinsic motivation. In order to make this theory more comprehensible, I am presenting my description of the theory. In my mind, their descriptions of the next two steps are not very well delineated. I actually communicated with DC and Ryan and told them that their theory could use a little bit of refinement and that they should think about learning theory to clarify their constructs. But they didn't necessarily listen to me. So please note that it is not what I'm about to tell you about these next two steps are not necessarily what DC and Ryan had intended their constructs to be, but it's my interpretation and I'm sort of elaborating on them. All right, so identified regulation. DC and Ryan suggest that identified regulation is when we value a goal and we find the goal personally valuable. For example, we may be motivated to work extra hard to purchase the new Tesla. Owning an electric car may be a thing that we find personally valuable, so to work hard to own one seems acceptable. So yeah, I would like to own a Tesla, by the way. It also could be that some students may work very hard to earn good grades because they value the success that good grades provide. So that would be another example of identified regulation according to DC and Ryan. I like this picture because this girl looks like she's so into him. She's like saying, oh, he is so cool. My theory is the following. I suggest that our behavior is driven by needs to be socially accepted. In other words, we do things to be accepted by or belong to a group. I may choose not to look as if I do my homework in order to be accepted by the cool kids. I may not do the homework even though I know it is a good idea to do the homework, but I'm so wanting to be accepted by the group, I'll skip it. I may be disrespectful to the teacher because everyone is being disrespectful to the teacher. I don't necessarily agree with it, but everyone is doing it, so it can't be all that bad, right? Identified regulation is to engage in behavior in order to belong. Whether it is my definition or DC and Ryan's, this type of motivation is reflective of some high order thinking. HOT stands for high order thinking. We justify our reasons. At this point, our justifications speak more to some external factor rather than the activity itself. In other words, we are focusing on what it allows us to do, and in this case, be accepted by the group. Take, for example, and this should be teens. Take, for example, smoking. Some people are attracted to and begin smoking because they want to belong to a particular type of people. These students are willing to ignore the tons of research that smoking is bad in order to feel accepted by the group. This is a strong motivator for high school students. As they need to be accepted by their peers, they are more likely to engage in risky behaviors or, in some cases, adaptive and productive behaviors. For example, if you place marginal kids with kids who value schoolwork, that person, the marginal kid, may be more eager to do the work. They won't like it very much, but the feeling of wanting to belong may motivate them to work a little bit harder. It is the in thing to do. All right, let's move on to integrated regulation. According to DC and Ryan, we are motivated to engage in behavior because the reward is integrated into our sense of self. Now, if you understand what that means, then that's great. But I really find that that's too muddled. So here's what I think. I tend to think that we are motivated to engage in behavior because we understand and accept the importance of the task. We are not just doing it for candy or for pride or to please others. Instead, we are doing it because we think it is sensible and appropriate. This reflects a very high order thinking that comes from our neocortex region of the brain. For example, I don't particularly like making the extra effort to sort my trash, but I do it because I believe my actions will save the planet, so to speak. I recycle because I understand, I know how it will improve my environment and the planet. A high school student may not necessarily enjoy taking 5 AP courses. I am certain that most students don't enjoy it, but they do it because they think it will benefit them in the long run, or it will help them get into college of their dreams. It has some practical value for them. The major difference between identified and integrated regulation is the reason for doing the behavior. For identified, it is for social acceptance. You may not particularly care for these AP courses, but your best friends are in those courses, so you're going to take those courses. These people are more focused on the social outcomes rather than on any other outcomes. That is, they don't really care about the behavior, they just want to do it because they want to feel a sense of belonging. For integrated regulation, They are doing this because they have very specific reasons, and those reasons seem sound and appropriate. That is, they know something about the task. Recycling is good for me, is good for the environment. Taking AP classes will allow me to impress the colleges that I want to actually get into. So there is some practical value for taking these courses. All right. So then we get up to intrinsic motivation. And like I told you earlier, the definition of intrinsic motivation is to engage in the behavior for the mere joy of it. It's pleasurable, it's satisfying. Even when the outcome can be negative or it can fail, I just enjoy doing the process of it more so than the outcomes that I get. But is there such a thing as intrinsically motivation, being intrinsically motivated? Earlier, I shared how I am intrinsically motivated to swim. I tell my friends that all the time. I tell them, oh, how I love waking up so early in the morning and swimming in the rain and swimming in the cold. But am I truly intrinsically motivated? Is there such a thing as intrinsic motivation? Well, using social constructivist learning theory as a lens, and this is a theory that we will learn about later in the course, I argue that there is no such thing, or intrinsically motivation is pretty rare. There is nothing that we do solely for the joy of it. More often than not, we do things in order to get some extrinsic value out of it. In some regards, we are regulated for external or identified or integrated reasons. For example, I swim because I get the extrinsic benefit of having a slimmer body. I feel proud when the coach tells me I did a good job or that I beat the person in the next lane. I know that swimming is good for my health, and so I know that it helps my heart and, it improves the function of my brain. So while I enjoy the task, I may also be motivated for these extrinsic rewards. In fact, when it's cold and I'm tired, and I don't want to get up so early in the morning, it may be these extrinsic rewards, the social acceptance of it, knowing that it's good for me and my heart and my brain, or wanting to get in there and not let the person that I just beat yesterday come, get more practice and be able to beat me tomorrow. These reasons may motivate me to get back into the pool. So, is there really such a thing as intrinsic motivation? I don't know. I'll let you be the judge. So the extrinsic distinction is arbitrary because the extrinsic-intrinsic distinction is arbitrary because perhaps in truth we are always motivated by both and our motivation falls somewhere on that continuum. As a teacher, it is a good idea to juggle both the extrinsic and intrinsic reasons for encouraging our students to engage in the learning tasks. So, you should think about how you can use these ideas to regulate or motivate your students. How would you externally regulate a class? How would you use interjected regulation to motivate a student? Or how would you use identified regulation to help students do their homework? Or how would you use integrated regulation to help students redo assignments that they need to redo? So those are things that you can think about. And thank you for watching.